Hello, everybody. It's great to be here. Actually, I've been attending for the last, I think, 4-5 years. This is the first time presenting. Um, and I just wanted to present it because I learned so much from these summits. If you are also a recurring attendee, just think about submitting a presentation next year. Share what you know, what you can help other people in this community. So a little bit of an introduction. I am an assistant professor of cybersecurity at the University of Tampa. I'm in the College of Business. And before I moved to academia about 3 years ago, I was a practitioner for 32 years. So that's why my research, I wanted to be applied research and based on what we need in the industry. The objective of this talk is to show how research and practice can come together to devise the best solutions to the issues we face in human risk management. You can apply it to other areas also, but that's what we're interested in here at this summit. How am I going to do that? I'm going to take you through these four topics. First, I'm going to talk about the role of research, then the role of practice. I'm going to illustrate this with an example from my own research activities. And then I'm going to give you a proposal for what we can do next. So let's start with the role of research. Why is scientific research important? Number one, it is incremental. That means that it builds on prior proven scientific research. Scientific research advances in little bites of increments at the time. Some people discover something, they publish it, then somebody else reads about it, they have new ideas, they add to it. So it is incremental. It is also rigorous in the sense that it's conducted using proven, long-standing methodologies. Not only that, it is peer review. So even if you use these proven methodologies, you have to go a step further and expose it to your peers, and they will validate that what you're saying is correct. So that gives it the rigor. Some scientific disciplines that apply to human risk management, we have behavioral psychology, which deals with individual cognition, personality types, persuasion, motivation, all of that stuff. We have industrial and organizational psychology that studies job performance, job satisfaction, job motivation, etc. Sociology studies group dynamics, social factors. Criminology studies victims and aggressors, including cybercrime, so we can learn a lot from that too. And a recent discipline called Informing Science, it self-describes as the transdisciplinary quest to discover better ways to inform. So it is informing science, not information science. And you can, from the quotes, you can get what it is. So all of these disciplines have to do with human risk management, and we can learn a lot about it. What is the role of practice? Well, first, the problem space. What we're trying to solve must be relevant to practice. At least that's my approach in terms of a scholar-practitioner research. Modeling of the problem should be based on actual field data. You consider the actors, you consider the organization, you consider the technology that is being used. This leads to an accurate problem definition. So there's also a formality about how to define the problem. Once you do that, you got your basis for the research that you're about to conduct. You do conduct the research, you come up with a solution that is based on the research you did. And again, that solution will be incremental, will be based on prior science, and will be rigorous. But it doesn't stop there. You have to validate that solution in practice. That's the other role of practice once you have the solution. And it has to be validated for two things, efficacy and efficiency. Efficacy, does it solve the problem? Does it actually solve the problem in practice? Efficiency, can it be implemented with existing constraints, right? You're not going to come up with a solution to human risk management that requires, I don't know, a trip to Mars or something like that, that you can implement in your organization. How do we validate that? Again, the role of practice. We use subject matter experts AKA practitioners, or more importantly, we do experimental field interventions. We put it out there on the field and we verify that it complies with the efficacy and the efficiency that I mentioned before. This would be similar to clinical trials, and it's actually the ultimate validation that the research-based solution will work in practice. So I'm going to illustrate this with an example. This is the research that I've been working on lately. It's called Designing a Messaging Strategy to Improve Information Security Policy Compliance. The problem space, like I said before, we start with the problem space, human risk management. Fill in the blank there, what percentage of incidents start with human element as an attack vector? That's the problem. This comes from multiple sources. This comes from your day-to-day life. Verizon DBIR, ISACA reports, SANS reports, etc. are telling us this. If we drill down a little bit, you have security awareness trainings, you have human risk management challenges such as changing employee behaviors, improving security culture. You've heard about this for the last 2 days through multiple great talks that we have listened to. And drilling down a little bit even more into practice, what is the GRC practitioner's perspective? Well, in GRC, especially the G for governance, we believe that information security policies address security risk, right? We assess the risk, we do risk assessments, then we implement controls to mitigate that risk. One of the ways that we mitigate controls is crafting information security policies. Those are administrative controls that are put in place, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So the desired behavior is that employees comply with those policies. Number one, that they read the policies, or it's actually our job to effectively communicate those policies, but we're looking for compliance with those policies. So that takes me to the definition of the problem. The problem that I'm trying to solve here is lack of compliance. That's what I'm going to concentrate on. So we move on to the research. Research is incremental. Then what that means is that I look at what other researchers have done in the past, and based on drilling down through several publications, several areas of research, I came up with this table, which is it's a compilation from more than 20 scientific publications in different disciplines, mostly psychology. Tells me the factors that influence employee behaviors in terms of lack of compliance with policies. I'm not going to go through all of them. I'm going to highlight a couple. For example, perception of the severity, vulnerability, and probability of security incidents. I'm sure you've seen this. Employees thinking that's not going to happen to us, and if it happens, it's not going to be a big deal, etc. Notice also that a lot of them use the word perception. Another one is this self-efficacy. You've heard this word also in the last couple of days. This is the belief of the individual about his or her own skills to implement a certain task. This is when your employees think that everything related to cybersecurity is a problem of the cybersecurity practitioners. It's really not my problem. On the organizational side, normative belief, also known as group norms. This is when I do what my boss is doing, I do what my peers are doing, I just go with the flow. And then last but not least that I wanted to highlight, and I'm sure you've seen this also, conflicting goals, productivity versus information security compliance, where compliance is seen as an impediment of business goals. So you probably know all this from your day-to-day practice. What I want to highlight is that our colleagues, our scientist colleagues in the psychology field and all that, all have written about this and have researched this in a rigorous and incremental way. So that's where I'm going to add an increment from, right? So looking more into different theories, etc. This is the scientific foundation for the solution that I'm going to propose. It's based on 3 different models and theories. The first one, the Fogg Behavior Model. If you come here for enough years. I think it was 2 years ago, one of the keynote speakers was BJ Fogg. That's where the Fogg Behavior Model comes from. I'm going to explain that model with a simple example. Let's say that, well, what it says is that for a behavior to manifest, it has to be a combination of motivation, ability, and a trigger. When those things happen at the same time, then the behavior occurs, the behavior that you want to occur. And again, we're all into changing behaviors, etc. So the example to illustrate this is, let's say that you want people to show a behavior, let's call it conserve energy, meaning if you're the last one to leave the room, you turn the lights off. You're conserving energy that way. The ability is knowing where the light switch is and how to turn it off. The trigger is you're the last one to leave the room. Now, if you don't have the motivation to conserve energy, if you don't care about it, you're going to just walk right out of the room, even though you're looking at the trigger, and even though you know you have the ability to do it. So you also need motivation to do that. That's what the Fogg Behavior Model states. And of course, there's a lot of research behind it. The second is the self-determination theory. Self-determination theory is about intrinsic motivation being the way to promote positive consequences. But how do you promote intrinsic motivation itself? With three elements. They call it three basic needs that need to be fulfilled in a person: autonomy, competence, and relatedness. Autonomy is the free will to make your own decisions and take your own actions. Competence is the desire of mastery, of being competent. And relatedness is to being seen by your peers in a good light. So the solution is to deliver a message. Oh, I'm sorry, I have the single client resonance model too. This comes from informing science, that last discipline that I listed in the, when I listed all the disciplines that have to do with human risk management. The single client resonance model is about informing. So how does a message go from a sender to a receiver or a client? It states that for a message to go from a sender to a receiver, it has to go through several bias filters, and it has to go right through it. It can't be stopped by any of these filters in order for the message to register with the receiver. Two important filters that I want to concentrate on here are the information filter and the motivation filter. And again, look at the pattern about motivation in all the three models here, all the three theories. Information is when you ask yourself, is this new? Is this message that I'm getting new to me? The second one, motivation, is this important to me? Even if it's new, it doesn't matter to me. Is this important? So this science states that if you don't have those two, the message is just going to drop. It's not going to go all the way to it's not going to register with you. So I'm combining these three models or theories for the solution that I'm proposing for this problem. The solution then is to deliver a message with sufficient utility to register with the receiver in a way that stimulates autonomy, competence, and relatedness, so that intrinsic motivation is promoted when the trigger appears. Right? That's how I combine all three of them in the proposed solution. Thus, the right behaviors will occur. Okay, so that's the scientific foundation. How do we make this into something that can be implemented in practice? Remember, efficacy and efficiency. You have to be able to implement it in practice. So I'm converting this research or this scientific foundation into a management level process that can be implemented on the field. What are the steps? Number one, segment your organization into functional groups. You see some examples there, sales and marketing, customer support, etc. Then the second step is you craft tailored messaging to each targeted audience. You consider their goals and activities, that's very important. And then you consider what matters to them and you craft the messaging in their language. So, and then the third step is to recruit influencers to help deliver the message. Leadership or peers within the functional groups that you defined before. These are not new concepts to you, especially the influencers concept. We've talked about this so much. What I want to show you is that there's a scientific base for this. For example, when you segment the organization into functional groups, you're addressing the normative beliefs or the group norms that what was one of the factors that science says influence the bad behaviors. And you also, putting people together in groups like that, you're addressing the relatedness component of the self-determination theory. Same with the second step. You're addressing all the misplaced perceptions because you're talking to people directly into what matters to them, which is also the concept in the message utility. If you remember the two bias filters, is this new to me? Is this important to me? When your message is targeted to a specific audience, let's say customer care, in the terms of what's important in their role within the company, then you are addressing that message utility concept. And you're also addressing the competence component of the self-determination theory because you're helping them be more competent within what they do at work. And finally, recruiting influencers. In the case of leadership, it addresses the conflicting goals perception that we saw in the influential factors. It also addresses the group norms because you are doing, basically you're doing what your leaders are telling you to do. Same with the peers or ambassadors. The normative beliefs are addressed there. Self-efficacy is addressed there because when you see your peers telling you how things should be done, it convinces you that you can do it too. You can do it as well. And everything about the self-determination theory is also addressed by having peers deliver the importance of security message to the rest of the group. So we go into the scientific rigor. That's the proposed solution. It's based on science. It's incremental, but we need to validate it. We need to validate it before we go to the to the field. And that's this is one method. I mentioned this using subject matter experts. Now I bring practice back into the equation. I did the research, did the scientific foundation. Now I'm going to bring practice again. And I did a study with subject matter experts. You can see who they were there. A chief learning office experience in corporate training, a marketing director experience in messaging, an IO psychology academic experience in organizational dynamics and climate, and a chief information security officer was also part of the group. And we debated this solution, and two things were highlighted during the discussion. Number one, they all favor intrinsic motivation over extrinsic motivation. Remember, based on the self-determination theory, the motivation component that I'm choosing is the intrinsic motivation. Some of the discussion, these are actually almost quotes from the discussion, was that punitive and reactive approaches are not effective motivators. Rewards are okay, but most effective in the form of public recognition or being a hero. A topic that was mentioned in at least 2 or 3 talks this last couple of days. Recognition instead of giving a gift card or a t-shirt or something like that. And avoiding the shame of causing an incident is an important motivation factor. That was new to me. It also came out of the validation study with the subject matter experts. That was about, do you think intrinsic motivation is important in this scenario? Then we go into how do we increase intrinsic motivation? That's theme number 2. And the conclusion is that both content of the message and actions by the people are important to influence the increase of intrinsic motivation. This is a longer list. I'm just going to pick 2 of them. For example, in content, we talked about real-life examples of relevant cyber attacks are influential. And then obviously the topic of recruiting influencers were all a thumbs up topic with all the practitioners to deliver the content. Conclusion, the solution was validated at least in this way for subject matter experts in terms of relevant messaging, intrinsic motivation, and the use of influencers. But also something that came from this exercise of validating the solution is that there is a necessary baseline that needs to be established before you even try any of this. And the baseline consists of at least two things: a healthy work culture and relevant policies. Remember, I started with compliance with security policies. Let me address that first. If the policies are not relevant to the business, if the security department didn't do a good job crafting policies that are relevant to what you do in an everyday to day basis, all the scientific foundation that I mentioned before goes out the window. The other one is the healthy work culture. There was a talk this morning that addressed this topic, right? That can you the clash of cultures, right? Can you do this in a culture that is, you know, the terms with the hot culture and the reminded me, cold and hot culture, of course. So you need a healthy work culture. If you don't start with that baseline, none of this is going to work. So that was also very important to see. And I just want to show you that these things come up in the process of the rigor of the research, right? You discover new things as you go. Continuing with the scientific rigor, the next step for me is a field experiment. So I'm just going to talk about the design. I have yet to conduct the experiment. I did conduct it at a lower scale. And because it was at a lower scale, the results that I obtained were not valid. I have to do it at a larger scale. But I'm going to tell you what the experiment is about. It's about proving that this three-step solution actually works on the field. So first you select one targeted functional group within an organization. You define what their goals and objectives and activities are. Then you design the tailored messaging based on those goals and activities. You validate that tailored message with the leaders of that group to make sure that they're relevant. We design the message delivery strategy. We're going to do this experiment. Like I say, it's like a clinical trial. You do it, you do this, you decide if you're going to do it for 6 months, for 3 months. If you're going to expose people to the messaging once a week, twice a month, etc. That's part of the design. The format of the messaging and the channels you're going to use it to deliver it. Would it be newsletters, posters, videos, email, webinars, blah, blah, blah. Then you divide the targeted group in 4 separate treatment groups. And this is where it gets interesting. These are the 4 treatment groups. The first group, you're going to send them the tailored messaging, and you're going to have the leadership deliver that message. The second group is not tailored message, it's generic message. MFA is important because of this, this, and that, without including in the message, because you work in customer, relations to their specific goals and activities. But you have leadership deliver that message, and then you flip the script, right? You do tailored message, and somebody some generic person sends the message, and then you do generic message, and somebody that is not leadership also delivers the message. This is what we call in science independent variables. So what we're trying to see here is what affects the delivery of the message. Is it because it was sent by leadership, or is it because it was a tailored content to that specific group? And that's why we kind of play with the 2 independent variables to see where we get the best results. And how do you know how you get the best results? There's several ways to do it. What I'm concentrating on right now is to measure security awareness culture before and after the experiment. There are several surveys out there that measure security awareness culture. So the idea is that you measure at the beginning, then you apply these 4 treatments to the 4 different groups, and then you measure it again and see which group show the highest increase in the index of security awareness culture. One example of one of the surveys out there is by KnowBe4. I'm sure you know them. So what's the expected result? Is that group 1 shows the largest delta increase used in the security awareness culture survey, because it's the one that is using the entire solution that I'm proposing. That's what I hope to get, right? But I would get other data points from this experiment. I mentioned it before. What is more important? Is message content more important, or who delivers the message is more important? So I would also get that out of this experiment. So a little bit on the conclusion side. Let me do a summary first of what I'm calling a scholar-practitioner research of this experience. Problem statement must come from practice. We need to talk to, I need to talk to practitioners. Practitioners talk to me about the problem they're facing. So the problem statement must come from practice. Then research goes to work. It designs a solution based on theoretical and scientific foundation that addresses the problem of practice in an efficient, and I think the word is efficacious or effective, I think is another way, which means it must be feasible to implement in practice. It should go through a rigorous evaluation using scientific methodologies. And I want to point out that, in my opinion, field experiments are the ultimate test to confirm that a science-based solution works in practice. So this is what I think this scholar-practitioner exercise brings to the table, is that we're not just thinking this is going to work. We're conducting field experiments to confirm that this is going to work. However, this is very difficult. It requires a strong partnership between academia and practice. That's what happened with my first attempt to the experiment. I ended up getting very small sample size, not many participants, there was no commitment, etc. It needs a strong commitment on both sides to see the project through. And the partnership should be able to articulate benefits on both ends. So it shouldn't be the company that is engaged in this relationship to test this in practice should see a benefit. It shouldn't be doing just to help the local university or to help the local researcher. And there are many benefits. There are many benefits from being the first one to find that what solution works for you, which is very important, to all the way to maybe patents and everything in conjunction with the researchers that are doing the experiment, being pioneers on this solution, et cetera, et cetera. So there are real benefits to being part of this equation. What I'm proposing to you is to be open to collaborations from academia and research. Your human risk management program and your organization are a great lab to conduct this type of research, also a great source of data. Do you have ideas? Seek out collaborations with academia and research. Do you have problems and need ideas? Here's a tip: search in Google Scholar instead of searching just in Google. You'll find what science has done in the past. You'll find publications. You can apply those concepts to your program. Publications are out there, most of them you can read, or at least you can read the theme. You can contact the authors or bring findings to researchers in your area. And importantly, have an ongoing relationship with your local universities or your alma mater. That gives you the ability to address problems and explore new ideas together. Have a constant relationship with them. Or talk to me. Let's work together. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Federico. If we have questions in the audience, please raise your hand. We have somebody walking around with a microphone. But one question that we did have on Slack is, you came here and you say, what can practitioners do to, connect with academic researchers? Could you maybe provide some insights on how academic researchers are changing their communication style to connect more with practitioners?
In this area, I mean, I don't really know if any colleagues that are proactively doing this. I would say that typically in your College of Business researchers would be very, very open to working with industry. At the end of the day, all the research coming out of the College of Business is to improve businesses, operations. So if you go and talk to somebody in that area, I'm sure they're going to be open to work with you. Now, having said that, again, you can come talk to me because although we might not be in the same geographical area, I mean, that shouldn't be an impediment the way we are a global community and can work together. And by the way, there's always a network of researchers. So if your topic is not in the wheelhouse of the researcher you're approaching, I'm sure they can find somebody that they can connect you to because we know enough. I mean, and that's really how the incremental part of research works, is that everybody knows, a lot of people know what other people are working on, and they collaborate that way.
Awesome, thank you. I see a hand up in the front.
There's a question here.
So you said one of your secondary data points is what was more important.
Oh, wait, can you wait for the microphone so our online speakers or our online people can hear?
You said one of your research points in your quad graph was the message received better from a leader, or was the message received better if it was tailored? When you ran the experiment, what ended up being more successful?
Well, that was the experiment design. I ran an experiment similar to that, but in a smaller scale, and the data was not conclusive because of the lower scale. So I learned from that also, talk about incremental learning, that this experiment has to be done on a much larger scale. So I don't have any results to share at this point. That was the experiment's design. But that's the idea, that we're going to learn from the experiment what's more important. Is it the delivery of the message or the content of the message? And it's an experiment that is replicable. So you might even conclude message content is more important as the result of these experiments, which, by the way, was run in a hospital, for example. And then you just take the same experiment and you can run it in the hospitality sector, a hotel chain, and see if it replicates. And if it replicates, now you have even more data to know that this solution is really good to put in practice. If it doesn't, then you have more to research in there.
So you'll tell us next year.
I will. Actually, I'm looking for people to run the experiment. Looking for companies with that strong commitment that I mentioned. So if anybody out there, here or online, would like to work on me on that specific experiment, let's talk, please.
All right, let's give another round of applause for Federico.
Thank you.